All right, let's do this. We don't have a lot of time left. Thank you for joining me today, and I'm going to quickly take you through what I plan to do for the company description assignments and make a case for why I think making infographics can be enjoyable and also beneficial to our students. I wanted to respond to Carl belatedly. He said something when I started pushing for technology in our classrooms that has stuck to me, with me to this day. And he said, we're not technology teachers. And so that was really, I think a lot of teachers feel like that, these days when they're teaching history or teaching economics or something, they might feel reluctant to incorporate technology. So I was reading a book over the break called Rewiring Education, and it's by a former vice president of education for Apple. And it's an interesting book, but there's a couple of quotes that I thought gave me pause. And one was talking about digital natives and how technology is a tool. And they don't see it as a tool, they just see it as part of their life, their environment now. So I think we need to understand that and approach it that way. And it's like us, we don't think, oh, how am I going to use electricity today? We don't think of it as a tool. It's just everywhere, right? And it's just something that exists. And then another one he said is that if you're teaching with technology, you're not teaching technology, but teaching with it, then you are making it, the learning relevant to them. So that's why I'm pushing for this assignment, and that's why I'm including a lot more technology integration in our curriculum over the past year. So I'm happy that a lot of you have come on board and made the effort and troubleshot and stuff like that. But it doesn't mean that you throw technology at a problem indiscriminately. And one way that we can give ourselves some direction is to use these standards, which I've been referencing, and it's called ISTE standards. And so it just helps us make the integration of technology more consistent and gives it purpose and can make us innovative and also reflect on how we integrate technology. And so that's something that I'll be referencing today in my presentation. So very quickly, I'm going to go over what an infographic is. I'm sure a lot of you already know because they are ubiquitous. They're everywhere these days. And then how and why we should apply it to the English language learning classroom. And then I will quickly compare a few of the web apps that are free, that are available for us to use. There are many, but I'm only going to look at, I think, 5. And then we're going to start building a sample that we can use in our classrooms from last year's student websites. Okay? So it's just a combination of the two terms, information and graphic, and is a visual representation of information, right? You can see them in advertising, you can see them on websites everywhere. So you're just going to have a small description of something and then a visual representation of that. So, why do I think it is beneficial for our students? One, it asks them to create something visually and linguistically, and it makes the connection a little bit stronger, and so they're able to remember something better, some vocabulary, some new ideas. And so for us, when we're asking them to present or to talk about these things, if they create something, it's a little bit more fluid in their memory, and they're able to draw from that, and so that helps them succeed in our assessments as well. And then it also asks them to develop their critical thinking skills. They need to make a decision about what image they use, or what color, or what text, and why, and so that's something that can be valuable to bring up during the presentation. For example, why did you choose this image to represent your company or something like that. So it's sort of an analysis that they have to defend, right? And then finally, our students have been studying English for so many years. They're sort of dead by the time they arrive, especially going through the college entrance exam prep, So this is something fun, it's engaging. If you used Canva for the personnel assignment last year, you probably remember that the students really came alive in talking about themselves in a way that they might not have in just a regular, ask this question to your partner and introduce them. So it really gives them a way to represent themselves visually and linguistically. So they have a little more ownership and it's more meaningful to them. So when we're doing, something like business English, where it's a little drier subject, I think this is where these assignments can shine and really make it more exciting and engaging to them. And then finally, what I think it benefits from using infographics is to give them an opportunity, and you an opportunity, to talk about digital literacy, which is something we don't really talk about much in Korea because the copyright laws are so weak or so not enforced that you can draw a picture from the Google search without any repercussions, right? But asking, when we use these infographics, there are templates that you have to pay for, and there's watermarks, and there's things like that. And so then you can just talk about how we need to use images that we have access to that are royalty free. And I'm going to show you 3 websites for different things that students can use, and you can point the students to those resources as well. So it's just an option for you to begin to talk about that. I know that's not the main focus of the class, but they should be thinking about how they're using other people's materials visually and reworking them. So how are we going to use these? We're going to go through the first 2 steps today. First, you just need to be comfortable with these web applications yourself. So you need to play around with them. You need to start creating your own things, find out what's available, what's free, what you have to pay for, which ones you can download from, and things like that. And then you want to be able to create a sample for the students to look at. You can bring that up in class, and then you can have a pretty good discussion in English about what makes this thing work or not. You can talk about the space, or if it's too crowded, the color, whether you want to use links. You can hyperlink different things into your infographic. And then, like I said, you can talk about digital literacy. So that could be a good conversation. You can have them analyze. If you had more than one sample, you could have different groups work on what they think of the infographic and whether it's good. Okay? Then you're gonna point them to what web app you want them to use, give them the tools, and have them either sketch it out in class or create it on their own. And then, as we saw in the previous meeting, you can have the students view each other's work and critique it and give some feedback. So all of these are valuable steps in the language learning process, I think. Here's a few other ideas that you can use these for. You can have them use it for writing practice, either analyzing a text or working from a simpler infographic and then moving to a paragraph or something larger. You, of course, look at grammar, idiom review, have them try to create something that represents a vocabulary term. Use it for comparative studies. You can have 2, your infographic can have 2 characters or 2 companies. Begin to get into some of the research presentation. There's really cool ones for data, representing data. I'm going to show you one of those. So if you ever have any higher level students in 3rd year or 4th year who are interested in that, that could be a good way to make the research process a little more exciting. And then, summarizing reading assignments or biographies, all of those could be good ways to do that. So the 5 web apps that I looked at One is Canva, which you may be already familiar with, and I think this one is one of the strongest. It's completely free. There are templates you have to pay for, and there are some watermarks on some of the things, so you have to pay attention to that. But you can download it in a variety of formats. You can embed it. You can collaborate. You can have the students send a link to their group members, and they're able to work together on that. And there's an app for their mobile device, so they can work on it in class on their phone, which is pretty cool. No other application has that. PictoChart has a phone browser version, but it's a little clunky in terms of what you're able to see, and you have to move the screen around. And the collaboration is only for a 30-day trial, so it might work for our students, but I feel like Canva is one of the strongest. Infogram doesn't have the functionality that we would like to see in the classroom maybe, but it is really impressive in terms of representing data. If for our assignment, where we're talking about the money and how it's changed over the years, the history and the vision, that might be one that you want to explore for your sample.
At this point in the workshop, I asked teachers to begin to work on their own, to begin to play around with the different infographic applications, web applications. And to do that, I directed them to a folder, a Google Drive folder that I had shared with them the night before. And within it, there were several resources, including the articles that I referenced for this presentation and an infographic of my own that helped, that directed teachers to some royalty-free resources and websites that they could use. And finally, a database of student-created websites that the students built last year, that this assignment was going to be incorporated into this year. So I wanted the teachers to go back and choose one of those student websites and look at the information that was there and the data that they manufactured, and then try to translate that into an infographic, just like the students would be asked to do this semester. So I wanted to kind of put them in the students' perspective. And the goal was that they would have or have begun a student sample that they could either share in the learning management system or put on the computer in the classroom and have a discussion with the students about the infographic, and also have a resource for the students to reference to help them generate ideas. The infographic that I had made about royalty-free resources was in the folder, and that included hyperlinks to each of these websites so that they could quickly be directed to these resources without me having to write the web addresses on the board or anything like that. So I tried to not only have a functional infographic, but also show them, the potential that they can have, and they can be used in a variety of ways. So the first three links are to different infographic building web applications that I had talked about during the presentation. And the next three were 3 royalty-free resources for images. And finally, the last 3 were for icons that can be effectively used in infographics. And so they began to play around with some of these tools and saw what the different web applications could do. And unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of there wasn't enough time for them to complete something, but they, were able to begin exploring what infographics can do and what they can build, and how long it's going to take for them and maybe for their students. So it gives them some perspective on the critical thinking that's involved and the creativity that's required in addition to the language development. When the workshop was completed, I wanted to conclude with the 3 takeaways that I hoped they left the room with. The first was that infographics are a great way to engage our learners, and they can definitely contribute to language development. And finally, they are a gateway to talk about some of the key issues within digital literacy. And then finally, I showed them the references that I had drawn from and that were also in the shared drive folder for them to look over at their convenience. It was a great workshop, and I think the teachers left with some new and exciting ideas. And I hope if you're watching this video, you did too. Thank you. Bye.